I love the outdoors.
Come on.
And I love creating videos. Combining these two is one of my favorite things to do in life. But filming in an unpredictable environment like that brings with it some definite challenges. So in 2023, me and my friends took a trip out to Red River, New Mexico to camp for 3 nights and summit the highest point in New Mexico, Wheeler Peak. And of course, I created a film around that experience, the best I had made up to that point. It was a pretty neat story. If you want to watch the full film, I've linked it right here. But today, I want to take you behind the scenes, showing you how and why I got the shots I did, some things that went wrong, as well as one big mistake I made when shooting this film. So my man, Jevin Dovey, who's a fellow YouTuber and an adventure filmmaker, refers to this style of video as vlogumentaries because they're sort of vloggy. Like, you'll see me as the director, cinematographer. You'll see me talking to the camera sometimes because I'm part of the story too. But it has touches of a more polished documentary style video with some interviews and stuff like that. So right off the bat, a really important shot to get the story going is the transitional shots that take us out to the location. So we were traveling a few hundred miles to get to our campsite. So driving shots are going to be pretty important to the story. You can get these with drone or with setting up a drive-by shot, or ideally you can have both to choose from. Yes, so we're here on the side of the road. We're about maybe 45 minutes from Red River, thereabouts. We're gonna get our good drive-by shot here. Getting drive-by shots and drone shots is always a bit of a struggle because, you know, we have different priorities, conflicting priorities. Everybody has different priorities about what the trip's about, but it does take time to get these shots and stuff. But anyway, Isaac's turning around there. We're gonna get the best shot we can.
We're about you headed back your way.
Let's do it. We're happy with the shot. Yes, I didn't do a perfect job at it. I lost him on the actual go by, but I got back to him pretty quickly. I'm not sure I'll be able to use the entire shot front to back, but we have at least the advancing shot and the departing shot. So yeah, it's a success. I ended up making the whole getting out to camp a very short story. So the amount of time we put into getting these shots is kind of disproportionate to the significance in the ultimate story, but they're very valuable. You know, it just wouldn't be the same without them. So we got to Red River, got camp all set up, and most of this film was pretty much going to be run and gun, capturing whatever presented itself. I didn't have a ton of things like planned or storyboarded or anything, but one of the few things I did know I wanted to get, besides the drive-by shot, was interviews at camp. So I'm framing up a couple of locations to shoot some quick little interviews, and I've learned that I kind of want to have some of that on site. It's okay to go back and post shoot, but it's neat if you can have it in the environment where your story is being told. So I like this right here. I like the backdrop. You have mountain. It's really pretty down this valley here. But we can't really get that in the background in an evening without having backlit subjects, which is not what we want. I kind of like this right here. Just kind of framing it up. My phone, getting a couple different focal lengths of what might work good. So for dinner the first night, we headed into Red River to grab some pizza. This was really delicious. And at this point, I was really starting to get pretty excited about the filming because it was getting to be golden hour. It was this cute little, you know, touristy town. So it can be kind of tough when you're filming a meal because you want to capture everybody eating, and, you know, then you don't get to eat yourself for a bit, so that's kind of rough. It's just kind of the real life of filming something like this. I'm just looking at getting some close-ups because I want to show the subjects enjoying the atmosphere and the food and everything, as well as just getting a good variety, so not getting just the same shot over and over again, but getting something, you know, different. And, you know, just look around, see what would be a creative way to get this shot. Like this shot from across the road was kind of fun, I thought, because it added depth with the cars going by in the foreground. And, you know, you can get so focused getting the shot that you miss some obvious things.
There's a step there.
This would not be the last time that I would lose my footing while filming on this trip. So golden hour was beautiful, and I had so much fun shooting this story of walking around the town after dinner. It was so cool. And the funny thing is, most of that didn't end up making it into the film, really. Like, I just used it as some B-roll to show us having fun together. Was pretty much it. But this brings me to, I think, an interesting point to make, and that is there's value in capturing a story that gets you motivated and moves you, gets you excited, even if it's for no other reason than to warm you up to the project and get those creative juices flowing. Even though that footage didn't end up having a significant impact on the film, shooting that story and the effect it had on me at the time ended up making the rest of the film better. Successful little walk, great filming. That is honestly one of my favorite things to do on any trip, is get some cool video. So very happy about that. Creativity is kind of an emotional thing, and so having a emotionally moving scene at the time of filming can be helpful. So back at camp, it was time for the interviews, and I mic'd these with just my little on-camera mini shotgun mic. So background noise and distance from subject to camera were pretty significant factors. I have since purchased a wireless lavalier microphone set, which is better, but I didn't have those at the time.
I love cooking that perfect meal and putting it out.
There's other things that are more important. One of those things, making sure everybody's safe.
Yeah. Okay.
Just say one of those things.
One of the things that's, I don't know if I want to say this or not.
So this was my first film where I really made use of multiple lenses. My Micro Four Thirds camera, the Lumix G85, not super great in low light. It's one of the known, downsides of the Micro Four Thirds system, and that camera specifically doesn't have a really great low light performance. But I did have an f1.7 50mm prime I was able to put on for as the sun was going down and get really some pretty cool shots. And around the campfire and stuff, I was able to get some neat stuff with that lens. The downside of it is it's a 50mm, which is a 100mm equivalent on Micro Four Thirds, so it's not very versatile. Got my super duper long lens on here. Obviously not really a vlogging lens, but it does give you some nice compression, and especially the shot of Isaac for his interview was a really pretty neat shot with that lens. Something I've never really done on a trip like this is have to offload footage, but I am shooting in 4K this time because I have the systems in place now to handle it. Plenty of processing power back home, so I'm excited for the quality increase that will bring. The downside is I'm here on the laptop in the forests of Red River transferring footage because, bigger file sizes, I have to keep those memory cards clear. So kind of the life that I've chosen for these trips, but I honestly would not trade it for anything. It's always difficult to get warmed up on a morning at camp, and I mean physically warm. Especially when you're filming, you gotta have your fingers out of your gloves just for that dexterity, so my fingers get so cold, especially flying a drone for some reason. They get super cold. My fingers are cold right now actually, it's like 45 or so, but same thing, I'm filming, so I gotta have my gloves off. So that's the primary challenge of filming a camp morning. Technique-wise, I'm just trying to get a good variety, capture what's going on, get some cool transitions, some cool depth of field, maybe some focus pull. I mean, just getting some cool variety of shots. I'll also do some informal interviews with the members of the group sometimes. How was the night? How'd you sleep? Stuff like that. I mean, it's stuff that doesn't really make it into, that's more on the vloggy side of the vlogumentary. So it doesn't usually make it into a more polished video, but you never know. It's just kind of fun to have for a home video or behind the scenes later on or whatever. So I'm doing a quick interview with Isaac about how their mattress held up, their air mattress.
Somehow it had some slits in it from the factory, and we ended up having to re-blow it up 3 times last night.
And so I'm gonna get some B-roll of the mattress, right? So I'm gonna get a pull-out shot starting at the tent and then backing up away. And so there'd been these rocks in the middle of camp, right? We'd kind of noticed them. They were kind of conspicuously positioned. So I'm backing up and I trip over a rock. Oh, that wasn't good. That was suboptimal at best. It was the kind of thing where the instant I realize I'm tripping, I also realize I've got to kind of go all in to brace my fall, or this is gonna be pretty bad. So the camera kind of went by the wayside and I couldn't really save it. Thankfully I was okay, but the camera took a pretty nasty bump right on the lens. I think everything is good. Let's check. That lens did end up having issues actually a few months later, which was kind of strange, but I have to assume it was related. The aperture stopped adjusting on it, so I've since replaced it, but happily it worked for the remainder of that trip, which was a really good thing. Now, since I didn't really know what our schedule was gonna be like the rest of the trip, I wanted to go ahead and take the opportunity that morning to get some drone B-roll of the camp and the valley and everything. So what happened there is I realized it's pretty bright up above the trees, so I want to put on an ND filter. So I have to pick which one I'm going to use. ND 8, 16, 32, 64. But I'm going to go with ND 8 because I definitely don't want it to be too dark, which would also be a problem. There you go, got the filter on. So we're up about 170 feet. I'm going to get a push forward, tilt up shot. Oh, that's pretty. Look at that bluff there. There are a few things I like better than getting the perfect shot. I don't know if those are perfect, but those were some pretty good shots. Very happy to have gotten the drone out this morning. But I just got the word from back at camp that they're about ready to start breakfast, and that's important too, so I'm gonna head back. The primary event on the first day in the mountains here was driving an off-road trail to the top of Greeny Peak, which is another mountain in the area. At this point, I've filmed a lot of videos of off-road driving, so what this usually looks like for me is a lot of running up steep slopes and filming drive-by shots. And we're in high altitude here too, so you can hear my heavy breathing in the background if you listen closely. Because I just run up that hill to get that shot. Now even drive-by shots on off-road trails can get a little repetitive, so I try to get variety. I will put the camera outside the window sometimes, using both cameras. I mean, get an action camera angle as well as, you know, your nice mirrorless camera angle. And I was trying to get some variety of drive-by shots, so I like this one where I went up a side road and had a little bit longer lens. As we got close to the top, I was able to get the drone out and film reaching the top of the peak. So that was pretty cool. It was some of my, I would say it was my best drone footage I'd gotten up to that point, because the vista was really cool. We were breaking up right about at the tree line, just a little bit above, so the trees are pretty thin. You had a beautiful view. So the hero shot of my drone flying career is this one right here, where I start close to the truck and just pull out for this gigantic, huge scene. Super epic, amazing views. And then I come in, I'm gonna come in and just fly over the truck and then out over the edge of the mountain. And without any directing from me, it's just a crazy coincidence. Everybody in the truck starts opening the doors and stepping out right as I come in and swoop over the top. And so it just makes this super cool, like one take kind of shot. Everybody steps out and I fly over and off into the woods. I was super stoked about this shot. But the funny thing is, I'm filming at the top of the mountain, but I'm looking down at my phone, at my screen. I haven't seen with my own eyes this vista, so I step out of the truck and I'm like, whoa, look at this. Because I mean, I knew it was epic, but I had seen it through the drone angle, which was really, really cool, but it just wasn't like being there. And it's kind of a theme that I'll touch on a couple more times here in this video, because I'm always trying to find the balance of being in the moment versus always being concerned about getting a shot. Because I'm here for the experience as well. I'm not just the filmmaker. I'm also an outdoor enthusiast. Probably not to the level that I would go out and do one of these trips by myself, but I really enjoy the experience and the whole package. So it's a constant kind of struggle to get awesome shots, but also sometimes, you know, put the cameras down for a minute and just experience where I am right now. Here's a particular shot that I was pretty proud of. So this is shot on a pretty long lens. We're talking about 130 or 140 millimeter full frame equivalent. So we got beautiful compression of a really big scene. So the story that I'm kind of trying to tell with this shot is our outdoor enthusiast woodsman, Isaac here. We're showing him in his element, in the environment he loves to explore, but the environment that pushes him beyond his limits. And we kind of see that with how big this scene is, but how kind of confident he is in it. That's kind of what's going through my mind sort of as I'm filming this. What would have been even cooler is if the mountain he's actually looking at is the peak we're gonna climb the next day, Wheeler Peak, which it's not. It's another adjacent mountain. But nonetheless, it tells, I think, the same story. So here in the back seat of the truck, I have set up kind of my production command center. Really, it's just my battery charging station. So I'm using this Opus solar generator, which is currently just functioning as a big battery bank, not solar at all. But it has enough capacity to easily charge up all the camera batteries and laptop batteries and drone batteries that I would ever need to on a 3-day camping trip. So that just gives us some peace of mind to not be charging things off the truck battery, which even though these are pretty small batteries, we're not really draining down the truck battery a whole lot. It just seems like best practice to charge up your cameras with a system that's not integral to like the truck start. So that night we filmed kind of a final thoughts video before the hike the next morning, because it's going to be a significant undertaking. It's a 14-mile hike or so up to over 13,000 feet, so it's pretty significant. And of course my ISO had to be pushed pretty high, so the footage isn't super great, the quality isn't great, but you know, it worked. So I put this lantern in the background as a practical light and also a bit of a rim light to separate us from the background, and then we're being lit from another light kind of off camera to the left here. And this is another time when having some wireless labs would have been pretty helpful for some audio isolation. A lot of noise in the camp, I'm not gonna lie. That generator, we got gamers back there chortling.
Back there.
I don't think they left camp today, by the way.
They did. Gaming. So next morning, it's climb day. That's the story for today. And so I got some kind of close-up shots of getting ready, getting all laced up for the hike. A lot of this footage was super dark. It's super early, it's about 4:30 in the morning, because we have to get an early start so we can get off the summit by early afternoon to avoid potential thunderstorms that are more common in the late afternoon. So I knew a lot of this footage would be really borderline usable, but also it's good to keep in mind the audio could be good to capture.
I am hyped. I'm so hyped.
You know, you just have that as voiceover with some other footage. In these kind of scenarios though, I'm also kind of reading the room on what's possible, what our focus needs to be in this situation, because again, I'm here for the experience as well as filmmaking. And here our focus really is getting on the trail as quickly as possible. That was pretty critical. So I didn't really have time to, you know, set up lights or anything. I was just capturing what I could capture and calling it good. First thing out on the trail, again, it's still pretty dark, but getting this shot, I think it's kind of iconic, this headlamp shot. It's kind of iconic of starting the trail, and you know, a lot of hike summits, mountain summits begin super early in the morning and it's dark, so this is kind of a cool shot to get, I think. Alright, so I'm down about 47% on the Action 3, so I want to go ahead and get a charge in before we get to the really good stuff up on the ridge. I do have an extra battery just in case, but I want to keep everything at 100%. So I've got my power bank in here, cord running from it, backpack strap to my mount, so I think we should be good. One of the limitations of this shoot was that the focal point, the climax story, was going to be shot entirely on the Action camera. Because of the size pack I was going to carry and just having extra weight and everything, taking the mirrorless camera wasn't really an option for me. So it definitely limits the kind of shots you can get, because you're stuck with like a 15mm wide angle lens on the Action camera. So I had to get creative with using slow motion, getting different angles. Most of the time I had a POV angle with the camera clipped to my backpack strap, but I did get shots of all of us walking by, or shots from in front, behind, the camera out on a tripod. And I tried to get a variety of angles with different foreground content and things like that. I'm gonna nip across the creek real quick here to get a cool shot. An obvious goal is to get across here without getting wet. How important is it to be on the other side? I'm not sure. Taking a step here, step there. Or right there, yep. Ready? Now, back across. Pretty stable. Hey! Oh, got wet. A big story beat in the hike, where the story kind of has a moment to breathe, if you will, is when we get to this really beautiful lake, it's Middle Fork Lake. And it's just gorgeous. As we're walking up to it though, all I'm thinking is, I gotta capture their reaction. I gotta capture those expressions of these subjects that I'm filming, because that's the part that can't be recreated. I can get a shot of this lake in a minute, but I can't recreate their expressions, because that's really important to tell the story. I actually didn't even do a great job of it. I had the camera clipped on my backpack and I was just trying to point it at them. But it's kind of interesting because again, I'm walking that line between being in the moment and capturing the story. So I'm as excited about seeing that lake as they are, but my back's turned to it as I'm filming them. So it's just kind of an interesting conflict I'm always struggling with when I'm shooting these films. So the interesting thing with this story is it ended up turning out very differently than I was expecting. What I anticipated was we were going to climb this mountain. It would be a struggle along the way. We'd have to pull together and have good teamwork. We'd reach the top, we'd see an awesome view, and then we'd come down and that was going to be it. Now, I encourage you to watch the full film to see what actually happened and why, but suffice it to say, for this video, that's not how it played out. So we ended up having this actually really emotionally charged decision to make at a crossroads. And this whole section that ended up being super emotionally gripping was filmed pretty much with the camera on the ground a few feet away. And the conversation was everything there. So it's actually really fortunate that the audio turned out as good as it did. There wasn't really much wind because that would have really killed the audio on the action camera. It wasn't perfect, but I was able to salvage most of it to be able to hear what we're saying and understand what's going on. So that worked out pretty well.
What is the trail like coming down Cleveland?
So I mentioned the potential for thunderstorms up on the peak. And something I was trying to convey with the final shot in the film is that it did end up storming up there on the peak that afternoon. So it was actually good that things didn't happen the way we thought they would happen. In an interesting turn of events, it looks like there's some rain coming down at camp. My guess it's also raining up on Wheeler Peak, but we'll see how wet things are at camp when we roll in. So the next morning, I've got a bunch of thoughts mulling around in my head about the hike and the story I wanted to tell about it, especially considering how it turned out. And it's really good to capture some of that content at the time, when it's fresh and raw in your mind and you can be authentic about it because it's really how you're actually feeling in that moment. So I was up before anybody else, so I just took a little stroll out to that valley where we shot the interviews near camp and just did a little vlog, putting my thoughts together about what the experience meant to me, things I'd learned and stuff like that. And that ended up making the final cut of the film, kind of taking us from the mountain down back to camp and wrapping everything up. But this brings me to the big mistake I made when shooting this film, and that was I failed to capture closeout interviews from each member of the team. There's always going to be good content in there that's helpful for wrapping up a story. Even if you add voiceover to it or you don't use everything somebody says, there's good sound bites in there that can be so helpful just to understand what everybody was feeling and thinking. And like I said, it's so much more impactful when you capture it at the time rather than having a voiceover or even a post-shot interview talking about the experience. But here's the thing, again, reading the room, understanding the needs of the team. Because of how things had played out the day before, none of us were in the right frame of mind to sit down in front of a camera and talk about it. Like that just, it wasn't gonna be a comfortable experience for anybody, including myself. Like just honestly at that point we were ready to move on, get home and kind of process everything that had happened without talking to a camera about it. So, you know, it's better if you can get what you need on location, but sometimes you just have to roll with the needs of the team and figure it out later. And that's what I had to do. Kind of a concern when it came to editing this film was that because the only closeout vlog I had was of me, it was a little strange because throughout the film, I hadn't really been the primary subject of the story. I wasn't really the main character. I was narrating, I was vlogging here and there, but mostly it was kind of about primarily Isaac and Katie, my brother and sister-in-law. So having it just be me closing out the video and concluding the story seemed a little strange. The compromise I made to get around this was I included a little talk I had, another impromptu informal interview that I did with Steve when we were still up at the lake on our way back down from the mountain. And he shared some heartfelt thoughts, his takeaway from the experience and everything. So having mine and his together, I think worked out to get a more well-rounded view of concluding the story. But that's the big mistake I made. Looking back on it, I don't know if I would have done anything different considering the frame of mind everyone was in, but it made it a lot more challenging putting a satisfying bow on the falling action at the end of the story. Oh! And I definitely learned from that experience. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching this behind-the-scenes look at me filming one of these adventure vlogumentaries in the great outdoors. I know I like watching videos like this, and it always makes me want to watch the full film. So if you want to check that out, you can watch it right here. It's called Middle Fork. It's about 37 minutes long. Still one of the best films I've made. So I will see you guys over there.